everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is V and I am a qualified actuary who is currently living and working in Canada. So my channel mission is to help you study smarter, work better, and live happier. And one of my objectives is to promote careers related to math, data, or coding. So careers in finance, tech, insurance, and so on. So I am very excited to introduce you to another working professional in the finance, accounting, and consulting areas. He is actually my classmate from the Master of Computer and Information Technology. And today he will share his experiences working in multiple different countries and how he did a career transition from the accounting audit into more of the product business and analyst role. Hi Nick, thank you for being here today. So first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I guess first of all, thank you for having me on your channel. I was quite honored and humbled to be invited when we first met through, I guess, OV, right? It was the OV community that you were posting your YouTube videos on. So hi everyone, my name is Nick. So I guess a little bit about kind of my background. I was born and raised in Vietnam for about 13 years. And then my mom decided that she wanted me to have a better education. And so she sent me over to the States for high school. So I left Vietnam when I was about 13. I ended up living in Chicago. So I went to high school in Chicago for about 4 years. And then ended up going to school in Arkansas at John Brown University down in Arkansas. I studied accounting and business in Arkansas. And then I basically moved to Houston around June of 2017. And then I started my job with PwC in Houston, Texas, working in their audit practice, focusing on the private client services. So a lot of companies with kind of larger revenues or pre-IPO companies for about 2.5 years before moving to Sydney last November.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nick. So what led you to study accounting and international business in the first place in university?
Yeah, so I guess my first inspirations and I guess influence always been from my family and the host family I stayed with during high school. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mom and dad didn't have much education growing up. We actually sell karaoke machines back home in Vietnam. And we've been doing that for about 28, 29 years. So my dad started the company with a few of his friends a while back, and we've been doing that ever since. I remember growing up, we would build these machines on our own. And so we would, bring in employers and we would provide shelter, we would provide food, and then we would kind of train them technically on how to build a karaoke machine. So I kind of always come from kind of a family, business family background. And then living in Chicago, my host dad, he had his own tax business. He's a JD CPA. And then my host mom, Judy, as well, she was also starting a small tea shop called Catizo. And so I've always kind of had that business influence. And, when I first took, I guess, accounting 101 or principle of accounting, I knew that, accounting was kind of the language of business. And I understood accounting, not to say that there weren't any rough patches for the 4 years when I studied accounting, but I understood accounting and I understood the majority part of it. And after I took principle of accounting, I just kind of thought, maybe I want to dig deep into this a little bit more. I wanted to understand more about kind of the language of business, how to structure financial statements, your balance sheet, your income statements, how to value companies. And so mostly that. We didn't have finance as a major when I was in college or economics. We were only allowed to do economics as a minor. And so I figured accounting was probably one of the more technical major at the College of Business that I attended. So I just kind of thought, why not? And here we are.
So can you tell us more about your professional path, after university and your experience working in multiple different countries, right? So what led you from working in the United States and then move to Australia?
Yeah. So I guess to start, I got my double degrees or Bachelor of Science in Accounting Business, and audit was kind of the path to start off, and I had a fantastic start at PwC Houston. So I joined PwC Houston to do audit, focusing on private client services for about 2.5 years. During that time, I actually had multiple clients in various different industries. So in freight and logistics, in healthcare, I audit a university. So I was on the a university audit in Houston. I was auditing renewable energy. And I had the opportunity to actually work on 2 different IPOs, one in Europe and one in Houston. So that was actually surprisingly challenging, exciting, exhausting, and probably would not do it again kind of an experience. And then during kind of my 2.5 years, I also had kind of the opportunity to work on different merger and acquisition and transactional stuff within kind of the audit functions and assurance practice. So that's where I worked with for 2.5 years. And during that time, I obviously had the opportunity to interact with multiple different team members across the globe. So when I was working on my freight and logistic company or client, I was working with team in the Netherlands, in Europe, and we also have team members in India. So we were working with team members over there. So I really actually enjoy the opportunity to kind of collaborate globally, to understand different accounting standards, right? So obviously in the US, you have to follow GAAP, but internationally, you have to follow IFRS, and they have different ways of, I wouldn't say revenue recognition, but they have different standards and how they recognize certain things, how they actually report certain things on the face of a financial statement. So I really enjoy kind of that learning opportunity. And then 2.5 years in, I was very, very fortunate and lucky to have met a partner who, after a few conversations, has said, that he would be willing to take me in Sydney if I want a career transition into our new ventures practice. So what PwC New Ventures is an in-house incubator where we actually build and scale technology for PwC. And so we spin up solutions in different ventures to serve the PwC advisors. And so I guess this would have been in June or July 2019. We kind of shook hand that I was gonna basically pivot my career from, well, I told him I wanted to try out ventures, a little bit to see what it would be like. And I had no idea what ventures would at the time. And so that partner was, he is based in Sydney, but he was in Houston when we met. And he said, yeah, sure, why not? And so on November 19, 2019, I just packed 2 of my suitcases and I left Houston, landed in Sydney, Australia, November 21st, 2019. And I've been working with our New Ventures team for a little over 12 months now. And so it's been a fantastic career transition. It's had given me an opportunity to kind of be really deep into the tech world, into the product world, working with Scrum teams, working with senior software engineers, with product managers, with head of products. And it's been a really good career transition that I quite enjoy thus far.
That's great. You made it just before the pandemic hit.
I came in just in time. So I came in November, and then December, January, there was a bushfire happening in Australia or in Sydney. And then COVID hit. So I didn't miss anything. I did not miss a beat in Australia. Yeah.
So can you describe your current roles and work in PwC a little bit more?
Yeah. So I guess another thing that I wanted to mention as well was in terms of the career transition, there were a lot of things that I took away from the audit role that I was able to kind of take and implement and use it in my current role as a product analyst for PwC New Ventures. And so, a lot of time in audit world, we are required to have an eye for details. And so we always look for things that are kind of in the big data, the project management aspect of it, the work ethic. And so a lot of that I was able to kind of transfer from my previous role to my current role. And so in my current role, I guess, I'm sort of a manager and product analyst for one of our ventures. So when I first joined, I was across 2 different ventures. One was a machine learning model that predicts your cash flow 6 weeks into the future. And so we would connect to your bank account or your general ledger, and PwC has developed a machine learning model that can predict your cash flow based on your historical information and data. And then I'm now currently kind of working on one venture alone as a product analyst and a manager for our Google Analytics. And basically on a day-to-day basis, I function and work quite closely with the Scrum team. And so I work with product managers, a Scrum master, software engineers to unblock any business requirements. So I am kind of a bridge between the business and the product. a lot of times software engineers need to understand what the business requirements are for a certain feature. So I would basically either verify, gather the requirements, put them in a JIRA ticket, and I would lead the team through a process that we call refinement, where I walk them through each and every single step of kind of what the feature is, what we're building, and how it adds value to the end user. And we would together come up with kind of an estimate of how much work they think it is. And then we would kind of put that into kind of our backlog and our product roadmap. And then we essentially build the features, we ship it, we deploy it. And then on the other side, for every feature that we build, I've also manage and implement Google Analytics. And so Google Tag Manager, I make sure that everything is actually triggering every time that a user clicks a button or they exit out of our website, to understand kind of the customer usage of a feature, because that's also quite important for us to understand whether a feature that we recently deployed is valuable or not to the end user. And so that's kind of a day-to-day basis. And then on an ad hoc basis, I also interact with different territories, since we actually serve PwC US and PwC Canada, actually, as our two biggest kind of clients at the moment for our venture. So I interact with advisors to understand, their pain points, and then prioritize that pain points and turn it into a feature so we can essentially ship and resolve.
That's great. So I guess maybe because now you're involved more in technology, that's why you decided to continue your further education and doing your Master of Computer and Information Technology then?
Yeah. Yep. I've always, that was actually, so my role at PwC New Ventures is basically was the inspiration for me to apply for our program.
So any tips for those who would like to pursue further continuing education in the computer science and IT degree?
Oh man, I think this is something I also still tell myself every day whenever I write Java. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I guess there's a quote that I try to live by, which is, be brave enough to suck at something new. And it's a great advice, but in the execution matter, it actually is so tiring and exhausting, because you learn a new linked list, you learn a new data structure, and you think you master it, and you open up your Visual Studio or you open up your Eclipse, and you're like, all right, time to write code, and you got nothing. Like, you're literally just like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do I write? So I think just never be afraid to suck in something new, or be brave enough to suck in something new, because I think the end result and the reward is actually really satisfying. The moment you actually have the ability to grasp a concept and then implement it into your code, or implement a method, or declare a class, I think that's quite satisfying. And then secondly, is never forget why you started. Whether it's, so for me, I have forgotten how much I enjoy building things. So I've always taken random Udemy courses, whether it's in Tableau, Alteryx, or just random JavaScript, HTML stuff. And I forgot how much I actually enjoy building things from scratch. And that was also the other reason that I applied to our master program. And so, I guess the other advice would be never forget where and why you started. Because I think sometimes that carried me through, whether it's the 4 hours final in Java or the midterm in Python. It could be exhausting when you're in the trench sometimes, but the end result really would be, in my opinion, it's been quite satisfying.
I totally understand because the last assignment for my recent course, the CIT 593, I guess I spent in total 30 hours writing code. And it was so exhausting at the beginning, and like, oh my god, it's like, how am I gonna accomplish this assignment? But like at the end, when all of your codes work, you'll be so happy.
When a program runs, I think that's the best part of it all. When you got hundreds and thousands of lines of code and you have no idea whether it's gonna work or not, and you hit the run button and somehow it runs. I think that's just the best part of it.
Yes, no bugs. That's the main
thing. That's right. No bugs. Yep.
Great. So last question I have for you today. So if you can give an advice to your younger self, what would you say in terms of like education, career, or just life in general?
Yeah. I guess I'll focus on the education aspect first, since my sister and I are both first college graduates in our family. I think education has played such an important role in my life, and I'm sure my sister would also say the same. I think that has enabled and opened so many doors for myself, and it's basically, I think helped us understand the value of education. And I think if there's one thing I would tell my younger self when I was back in college, I would say to try more difficult things. I think it wasn't that accounting was easy, but I think there were things that I was intimidated by, whether it was, hard, kind of the hard science or the engineers, or kind of the quant finance course, or some really hard stuff that I never thought I could handle. So I think in terms of education, I would go back and slap my younger self in the face and say, suck it up and learn the technical stuff. And try to learn new things. I think from an education perspective, it really opens up, not only kind of different ways of thinking, but also kind of how you think about the world. So I think that's from an education perspective. From a professional perspective, I think network more, get out there, and because there's so many tools right now, and the world is so different with the pandemic, right? So I'm on a platform called Lunch Club where I meet 2 to 3 new people every week, and they match you with people kind of randomly from all across the globe. I've met hedge fund managers, I've met entrepreneurs from Europe, I've met portfolio managers for in-house or for incubators program here in Sydney in the States. I've met potential technical co-founders. And so I think network more and meet people, because you never know kind of whether those connections will be kind of valuable to you in the future, whether it's from a personal or professional perspective. And then lastly, from a personal perspective, I think this one I definitely would go back to my younger self and slap my younger self in the face, is develop more genuine friendship. I think in college I focused a lot on kind of school, getting a well-paid job, and then just working a lot to afford my expenses. And so I didn't have a lot of time to be around with my friends, and I've still talked to a few of my college friends today. But if I could go back, I would take more trips with my friends. I would, hang out with them more in coffee shops and all that kind of stuff. So I think from a personal perspective, I think those friendship would kind of carry me through some tough times, whether it's through college or even now. So yeah, education, professional and personal.
I think you shouldn't slap your younger self that much. You still did very well looking at how you actually progress and where you are as now. So you should still give your younger self some credit.
I would tell him that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but yes, I totally agree about studying the more difficult stuff at the beginning, because once you can overcome those difficult things, it does help you to build the habit, right? The ability to learn. So everything else would make it easier, and networking and relationships are extremely important. Yep. Whatever we do today.
I agree.
Yeah. So thank you again so much for being here today and sharing with us about your professional journey and everything. So
thank you for inviting me. It's been really fun, and what an honor it is. So looking forward to the next conversation.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned more about another working professionals and their experiences and career path. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know in the comment section. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in next week video. Bye!